Welcome to Have You Read It, the channel where we bring books to life, one summary at a time. Whether you're here for self-help, personal growth, or business inspiration, there's something for everyone. Today we're diving into John Carreyrou's Bad Blood Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup. This book isn't just another Silicon Valley success story, it's a chilling exposé of ambition, deception, and the potentially devastating consequences of prioritizing hype over substance in the healthcare industry. Our story begins with Elizabeth Holmes, a young woman with a dream, to revolutionize blood testing. From a young age, Elizabeth displayed an intense drive to become a successful entrepreneur, fueled by family stories of both greatness and squandered potential. "I grew up with those stories about greatness," she once said, "and about people deciding not to spend their lives on something purposeful, and what happens to them when they make that choice, the impact on character and quality of life." She set her sights on Stanford, a breeding ground for Silicon Valley success stories, and immersed herself in chemical engineering, a gateway to the biotech industry. Inspired by her internship at the Genome Institute of Singapore, where she witnessed firsthand the limitations of traditional blood testing methods during the SARS outbreak, Elizabeth conceived of a revolutionary idea, a painless patch that could diagnose and treat medical conditions simultaneously. She shared her vision with Channing Robertson, a charismatic Stanford professor who became an early supporter, and Shaunak Roy, a PhD student who would become Theranos' first employee and co-founder. Elizabeth's initial concept, the Thera patch, was ambitious, perhaps even bordering on science fiction. As Shaunak himself noted, the patch, as envisioned, faced significant technical hurdles. Eventually, they shifted from the patch idea to a more feasible cartridge and reader system, miniaturizing existing blood testing technology. Elizabeth's aversion to needles, inherited from her mother, became a driving force behind the company's focus on using minuscule blood samples. To fund her fledgling company, initially named Real-Time Cures, later Theranos, Elizabeth leveraged family connections, securing investments from Tim Draper, Victor Palmieri, and even relatives. Not every investor was convinced, however. MedVenture Associates, for example, declined to invest after Elizabeth struggled to answer their technical questions. Despite these early setbacks, Elizabeth secured nearly $6 million in funding by the end of 2004. Edmund Koo, a seasoned engineer, joined Theranos in early 2006, drawn by Elizabeth's inspiring vision. However, he soon discovered the enormous challenges of building a reliable blood testing system using the tiny blood volumes Elizabeth insisted upon. Despite re-engineering efforts, the Theranos 1.0 prototype remained unreliable. Financial projections, meanwhile, were being revised upwards to attract investors, even if some, like then CFO Henry Moseley, expressed discomfort with the overly optimistic hockey stick forecasts. Moseley's tenure at Theranos would be short-lived. After discovering that a demonstration for Novartis had been faked and confronting Elizabeth about misleading investors, he was abruptly fired. As Theranos struggled to perfect its technology, Elizabeth's admiration for Apple and Steve Jobs became increasingly evident. She often referred to the Theranos system as the iPod of healthcare and sought to emulate Apple's design aesthetic. She even recruited several Apple employees, including Anna Ariola, a product designer who had worked on the iPhone. The Apple recruits brought a fresh perspective but soon encountered Theranos' peculiar corporate culture. They noted Elizabeth's intense focus, her odd habits like blasting hip-hop music in her car before morning meetings, and the pervasive secrecy and paranoia within the company. Avier Tavanian, a former Apple executive and Theranos board member, began having doubts about the company's progress and Elizabeth's leadership. After objecting to a stock grant that would increase Elizabeth's voting power, he was pressured to resign from the board. His attempts to warn fellow board members about the discrepancies he'd noticed in the company's financial claims were ignored. In 2007, Theranos faced a lawsuit from 3 former employees who had started a rival company. The ensuing paranoia and heightened security measures further contributed to the company's toxic work environment. Amid this turmoil, a new blood testing system, dubbed the Edison, emerged. Built around a repurposed glue-dispensing robot, it became the new focus of Theranos' efforts, leading to layoffs and the departure of key employees, including John Carreyrou, the company's co-founder. Richard Fuis, a medical inventor and former neighbor of the Holmes family, entered the picture. Annoyed by what he perceived as the Holmes family's ingratitude for past hospitality, and seeing an opportunity, Fuis filed a patent application for a physician alert mechanism that he believed would be essential for at-home blood testing devices. He referred to this patent as the Theranos killer. Chelsea Burkett, a Stanford friend of Elizabeth's, joined Theranos in 2009, only to be immediately confronted with the abrasive personality of Sunny Balwani, Elizabeth's much older boyfriend, who had recently become a Theranos executive. Sunny's aggressive management style and Elizabeth's unwavering faith in him created further tension within the company. Sunny's background, which included a lucrative but short-lived stint at a dot-com company and a subsequent tax shelter scandal, raised red flags for some employees. His flashy cars and expensive clothes seemed more befitting a nightclub owner than a Silicon Valley executive. Chelsea's experiences in Belgium and Mexico, where Theranos conducted validation studies and pursued a swine flu testing project, respectively, exposed further flaws in the company's technology and ethical lapses in its practices. She grew increasingly disillusioned with the company and with Sunny's behavior and resigned in early 2010. Dr. Jay Rosen, aka Dr. J of Walgreens, became enamored with Theranos' vision. He championed a partnership between the two companies, envisioning Theranos devices in Walgreens stores across the country. Despite Kevin Hunter, a lab consultant hired by Walgreens, raising red flags about Theranos' technology and practices, Walgreens pushed ahead with the partnership, driven by a fear of missing out on a potentially game-changing opportunity. Safeway, another major retailer, also entered into a partnership with Theranos, fueled by CEO Steve Bird's passion for wellness and preventive health care. Bird invested heavily in store renovations to accommodate Theranos wellness centers, but the project faced repeated delays. Lieutenant Colonel David Shoemaker, a military expert on FDA regulations, raised serious concerns about Theranos' regulatory strategy, which sought to bypass FDA review. His attempts to warn Elizabeth about the legal requirements for deploying medical devices were met with resistance, triggering an FDA inspection of Theranos. Despite being offered an opportunity to conduct a limited experiment with de-identified blood samples from soldiers, Theranos failed to follow through. As Theranos pursued its partnerships with Walgreens and Safeway, Elizabeth continued to emulate Steve Jobs, adopting his signature black turtleneck and even borrowing management techniques described in Jobs' biography. She assigned a young engineer, Kent Frankovich, to design a new device, the Mini Lab, which was intended to perform a wider range of blood tests than the Edison. Greg Bainey, an engineer recruited by Kent, was initially excited by the project, but grew disillusioned with Elizabeth's management style, her obsession with miniaturization at the expense of functionality, and the secrecy surrounding her relationship with Sunny. Nepotism further complicated the company's dynamics when Elizabeth hired her brother, Christian, and several of his Duke fraternity brothers, known as the Frat Pack. Their lack of relevant experience and their privileged access to information created resentment among other employees. The Mini-Lab's development was plagued by technical challenges, many stemming from Elizabeth's unrealistic demands and Sunny's lack of scientific understanding. Despite these problems, Elizabeth pushed ahead with the launch of Theranos' blood testing services in Walgreens stores, driven by contractual obligations and the need to secure more funding. To meet the launch deadline, Theranos resorted to cheating. Daniel Young and Xinwei Gong hacked into commercial Siemens analyzers to make them compatible with fingerstick blood samples, even though this meant using the machines in a way that neither the manufacturer nor the FDA approved of. Chiat/Day, the advertising agency that had once represented Apple, was hired to create a marketing campaign for Theranos. Despite concerns raised by members of the Chiat/Day team about the veracity of Theranos' claims, Elizabeth insisted on bold and often misleading statements in its marketing materials. Alan Beam, a pathologist, joined Theranos as lab director in 2013. He was initially impressed by Elizabeth's vision, but quickly became alarmed by the Edison's unreliability, Theranos' questionable lab practices, and Sonny's bullying management style. He tried to delay the launch but was overruled by Elizabeth. Tyler Schultz, George Schultz's grandson, joined Theranos after graduating from Stanford. He and his colleague Erica Chung quickly discovered the company's flawed data practices and questionable lab procedures. Despite their attempts to warn Elizabeth and George Schultz, their concerns were dismissed. After receiving confirmation from the New York State Department of Health that Theranos' proficiency testing practices were illegal, Tyler resigned. He was subsequently subjected to intense legal pressure from Theranos to recant his claims and name the journal's sources. After the Fortune article propelled Holmes to national fame, Theranos' valuation soared to $9 billion. Partner Fund Management, a San Francisco hedge fund, invested $96 million based on misleading financial projections and claims about the Theranos technology. Alan Beam's growing unease with Theranos' practices led him to forward company emails to his personal account. He resigned in late 2014 and was subsequently pressured by Theranos to delete the emails and sign an affidavit promising not to disclose confidential information. As I began investigating Theranos, I encountered resistance and legal threats from the company and its lawyers. Despite these attempts to intimidate my sources and me, I was able to gather enough evidence to publish my first article in October 2015, exposing Theranos' flawed technology and questionable lab practices. Holmes responded by denying the allegations and attacking my reporting. However, subsequent FDA and CMS inspections confirmed many of my findings, leading to sanctions against Theranos, the voiding of hundreds of thousands of test results, and the eventual shutdown of the company's laboratories. Holmes's attempt to rehabilitate her image by unveiling the mini-lab at the AACC's annual meeting in 2016 backfired. The presentation, which lacked rigorous scientific validation and failed to address the company's previous misleading claims, was widely criticized by experts. Facing multiple lawsuits and criminal investigations, Holmes was forced to relinquish control of Theranos and settle with investors and regulators. The company, once valued at $9 billion, was on the brink of collapse. The main takeaway from Bad Blood is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the importance of truth and transparency, especially in the healthcare industry. Holmes's relentless pursuit of success, coupled with a culture of secrecy and intimidation, ultimately led to the downfall of her company and put patients at risk. Here are a few heuristics to remember. Due diligence is crucial. Don't be swayed by hype, especially when it comes to healthcare. Scrutinize claims, demand evidence, and seek independent verification. Transparency matters. Secrecy breeds suspicion. Be wary of companies that are unwilling to share information about their technology or practices. Culture counts. A toxic work environment is often a red flag. Pay attention to employee turnover, complaints, and lawsuits. Ethics first. Never compromise patient safety or scientific integrity for the sake of profit or fame. Thanks for watching. Have you read it? Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you never miss our next book dive.